having me with her for the better part of a 2-day flight. After all, she had neither the time nor patience to care for a young child, so any opportunity for someone else to take care of that being was always welcomed with relief on her part. In 1954, everything changed. Just as Mother had finally settled into a comfortable life within the prominent high society social scene of Ankara, I was being cared for by a lovely Turkish nanny, and my only memories of my mother from that time are wafts of femme perfume and the rustling of her silk dress as she kissed me goodnight. In the midst of this seemingly perfect state, my father made a sudden, firm, and final decision. We were leaving Turkey, and England was going to be our permanent home. The change was a horrible shock. Mother was almost hysterical as she cried and pleaded with him. "Please, Soraya," she begged, "not back there. Please. Can't we stay here, please?" "No," he told her, and that was that. There was absolutely no further discussion on the matter, or any explanation. In general, my father was the kindest man I have ever known. He was terribly handsome, spoke 6 languages fluently, dressed like Cary Grant, yes, he owned spats, and lived his life exactly the way he wanted, although we had no idea how that was, as his life was a huge secret. He was also very tough and precise in his instructions or commands, and not to be questioned. Our lives were run his way, which wasn't necessarily awful, just quite unpredictable for us at times. After leaving the CIA, which, at least to our knowledge, he did, he travelled extensively as a ship buyer's agent. By the time we moved to England, his job involved numerous trips to Norway and other places, facilitating the exchange of tens of thousands of dollars in the buying and selling of oil tankers. Even though I was a child, who knew basically nothing about money, my mother would carefully explain how large sums would come and go from our own family bank account. But she trusted my father, as we always seemed to have plenty ourselves, so there was never any need for concern. What really irked my mother was never knowing where my father was in the world at any given time. After all, this was the 1950s, and international communication was sparse and difficult. My mother had to rely on letters and the occasional overseas phone call, a monumental affair of waiting hours by the phone and yelling numbers at an operator who could barely hear her over the static. When she finally did get through and the number was ringing, if my father was unavailable, the call was over, and she would have to wait sometimes a week in the queue to place it again. I do remember on many occasions, and upon my father's return from parts unknown, hearing raised voices from behind the kitchen door, as my mother would grill him on his recent whereabouts. Her voice would get louder, demanding to know where he'd been and why. My father would stay silent, closed like a locked door, which was usually when Mother would finally slump in a chair, exhausted by her efforts. His response to her was always calm and reassuring, but also entirely vague. "It's business. Nothing for you to worry about. Just look after our precious child." Everyone liked and deeply respected my father. He conducted all his business on a handshake, believing a man's word was truly his bond, so contracts weren't necessary. For some inexplicable reason, no one ever challenged that statement. No one double-crossed him, backed out of deals, or doubted anything he said or did. When he walked into a room, you felt his presence. He was charming, diplomatic, and very smart. He handled my crazy maternal grandmother brilliantly, and my sweet grandfather worshipped him. Mother, on the other hand, baffled him. I think my father eventually realized, and I merely surmise this, that her mind was not right, nor was it ever going to be. I believe that, not too long into their marriage, he'd realized he'd made an enormous mistake. I have a clear memory of us standing outside my mother's bedroom door. Father was holding a cup of tea, the cup rattling on the saucer, almost in time to the violent and rhythmic banging on the wall from inside the bedroom. My mother's head made contact again.